She started leaving the window open at night. No explanation. No reason. Just a silent shift in habit, barely wide enough to notice, but just enough for the wind to slip through. That was the first sign she was already leaving. We got married in a greenhouse. Real ones, not the rented glass ones people throw corporate parties in. It belonged to her grandfather, a half-collapsing structure choked with ivy and soft decay, but she said it felt honest, like a promise made under something that didn't pretend to be permanent. Her name was Elise. She wore her hair tucked low at the nape of her neck, and she always smelled like cedar wood and clean linen, the kind of woman people leaned toward when she spoke. Not because she was loud, she never was, but because everything about her invited quiet. I was the opposite. Practical. Restless in ways I didn't always understand. My hands always needed something to hold, coffee mugs, wrench sets, grocery bags I didn't need to carry. We moved into a small two-bedroom cottage that fall, just outside a town too small to hide in but too big to feel seen. She painted the walls a color called ash blue. Said it reminded her of morning fog on the lake she used to visit as a kid. I built the bookshelves. Floor to ceiling. No backing. She filled them with poetry books and half-dead plants and chipped ceramic pots. For a while, it worked. Elise was a therapist, grief and trauma, mostly, and I ran a small bike repair shop near the college. I'd built it from nothing, just a metal shed and a few second-hand tools, and somehow made it sustainable. She said I had good hands. I liked how she said that. The quiet started about a year in. Not the kind of silence that follows a fight. Not sharp. Just absence. She stopped humming when she made tea. She stopped taking off her shoes when she came inside, even though she used to insist on it. Started standing by the window longer, even when nothing was outside but the neighbor's wind chimes and a gray dog that never barked. I didn't ask. I told myself not to turn her sadness into my crisis. That's something she used to say, not everything is about you, Callum. It wasn't cruel. Just firm. She knew how to cut cleanly. In the third year, she started working longer hours. Said her clinic was understaffed. Said people were grieving more than usual, and she couldn't turn them away. I believed her. Of course I did. She wasn't the kind of person who lied. Still, I noticed. There was a scarf I'd never seen before. Left hanging over the chair in the entryway, light gray with small stitched birds on the ends. Elise hated birds. Always said they made her uneasy. When I asked, she said it belonged to a coworker, left behind after a carpool. I didn't press. Then there was the perfume. Not hers, she never wore any. Said it messed with her senses in session. But I'd catch it in the hallway some nights, faint and sharp, like wildflowers crushed under something heavy. Once, I followed it to the guest room. The window was cracked open, even though it was late February. Elise, I asked. She didn't turn. Just said, "It's stuffy in here," and went back to folding towels. The towels were always folded. Perfectly. Even when I hadn't used them. I started sleeping less. Not because of her, not entirely. Just this tightness in my chest I couldn't shake. Like I was waiting for a sound that never came. I'd lie in bed and watch the ceiling, listening to her shift in her sleep. Soft, even breathing. Peaceful. I began fixing things that didn't need fixing. A drawer that already slid smoothly. A faucet that didn't leak. I told myself I was just being useful, but I think I was trying to stay in the house longer. Trying to catch something before it disappeared. And yet, nothing ever really happened. No fights. No absences I could name. Just that steady, low hum of something coming undone. There was a Saturday morning in March. I'd woken up early and gone to make coffee. She was already sitting outside on the porch swing, barefoot in the cold, legs tucked under her, eyes fixed on the field behind our house like she was waiting for something. Or someone. "Elle," I said gently, pushing open the screen door. "You okay?" She turned slowly, blinking like I'd pulled her out of a dream. "Yeah," she said. "Just thinking." "About what?" She didn't say. I didn't ask? She stood, stepped inside, brushed a hand across my shoulder as she passed. Her fingers were cold. Later that day, I found the window in the guest room cracked open again. The wind had knocked a photo off the dresser, one from our wedding day. Us under the greenhouse arch. Her veil tangled in the vines, both of us laughing. The glass was shattered. I cleaned it up quietly. She never mentioned it. Neither did I. And the window? I left it open. Just a little. Just to see. There was a moment the next week, small, forgettable to anyone else, when I watched her reach for a mug that wasn't there. She stood at the kitchen sink, hand hovering just above the counter, like she expected something to be waiting. Then, after a pause too long to feel casual, she picked a different one. The yellow mug with the chip on the handle. She hated that one. I kept noticing things like that. Little misalignments. She used to play music while she cooked. Now it was silence. She stopped asking about my day. Not in a cold way, just absent-minded. Like she wasn't forgetting. Like she was somewhere else entirely. One night, I found a note folded inside her coat pocket. Not hidden. Not dramatic. Just folded, square, and deliberate. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Just a few words in her handwriting. It's not love, not really. But it's enough to keep me warm. I didn't confront her. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid she'd tell me the truth. Maybe I thought she'd say it was from a book, or a patient, or something I'd forgotten we once wrote to each other. But I knew her handwriting. I knew how her letters changed when she was being honest. Less flourished. Tighter. That note wasn't a lie. That made it worse. I left it where I found it. She spent more time out of the house. Long walks that stretched into dusk. Dinners that got cold while I waited. I told myself it was seasonal depression. I told myself it was stress from work. That I was supposed to give her space. But space is just silence with better lighting. One Thursday night, she came home soaked through. Rain clinging to her like it was trying to keep her. Her hair stuck to her face. She laughed when she saw me at the door, really laughed. A kind of unfiltered sound I hadn't heard in months. Maybe longer. Left my umbrella in my office, she said, tugging off her boots. I walked halfway home before I realized. I stared at her, dripping, flushed, radiant. Like a different version of Elise had stumbled in from someone else's life. Why didn't you call? I asked. She shrugged. Didn't want to bother you. I almost said, you're my wife. But I didn't. The words felt small in my mouth. Instead, I got a towel and dried her hair. She let me. Her eyes were closed the whole time. Later that night, I woke up alone. The bed still warm on her side. I found her in the guest room, sitting on the floor in the dark. The window was open again, the curtains fluttering like they wanted to speak. Elle. I kept my voice quiet. She didn't look at me. Couldn't sleep. It's freezing in here. She nodded, arms wrapped around her knees. I like it. Makes everything feel sharper. I stood in the doorway for a long time, then walked over and sat beside her on the floor. She didn't lean in, just kept staring out the window like she was waiting for a signal. The next morning, I made us pancakes. She smiled as she poured syrup, one of those easy Sunday morning smiles. And for a second, I could almost believe nothing had changed, that she wasn't slipping, that I wasn't losing her in pieces. But when I went to clean up, I noticed her phone on the edge of the table. She'd left it unlocked. Not like her. Not in months. I don't know what I was looking for. I wasn't expecting anything, not really. But there was a message thread near the top. A name I didn't recognize. Just the initial. H. I opened it. Nothing romantic. No declarations. Just. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Same place. Her reply. Windows always open. I locked the phone and set it back down, careful not to shift it even an inch. She came back into the room just as I was rinsing the plates. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said too quickly. Just tired. She nodded, studying me for a moment longer than usual. Then she kissed my cheek and went to change. I stood at the sink long after the water turned cold. I didn't bring it up. That became my pattern. Collect a small moment, tuck it away like a stone in my pocket, then pretend it wasn't heavy. That Saturday, she didn't come home. No text. No call. Her car wasn't in the driveway. The porch light, which she always turned on for herself, stayed dark. I sat in the living room with the lights off, the television muted. Hours passed. 8 o'clock, 10:15, midnight. I stared at the window in the guest room from across the hall. Still cracked. Always cracked. I told myself she stayed at a friend's. Maybe a client had a crisis. Maybe she just needed a break. But breaks don't last this long. I don't remember falling asleep. I woke up to the front door opening. The soft sound of keys sliding into a bowl. Her footsteps were deliberate, heels clicking on the tile. I waited, pretended to sleep. She didn't come into the bedroom. I heard her pause in the hallway. Then the creak of the guest room door. Then nothing. In the morning, she made coffee like nothing had happened. Wore the same sweater she always did on Sundays. She kissed my temple, handed me a cup, and said, "You were snoring last night." I watched her walk back into the kitchen, humming a song I didn't recognize. Something quiet. Low. The song didn't stop. She hummed it all the way to the window, then paused. I couldn't see her face, just the way her shoulders rose as she pulled it closed. Not locked, just shut. That was the first time she ever closed it. I said nothing. I sipped my coffee and told myself, maybe I imagined all of it. Elise started sleeping in the guest room after that. No announcement, no explanation. Just one night she didn't come to bed, and the next night she didn't either. I found her pillow missing from our room. The nightstand empty. Her toothbrush still sat in the bathroom, but she stopped using the mug we shared for rinsing. I asked her once, half-heartedly, more to hear the sound of the question than to expect an answer. "Are you coming to bed tonight?" She was brushing her hair in the hallway mirror, her eyes on her reflection, not me. "I toss too much," she said. "You've been sleeping better without me, haven't you?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I don't sleep at all anymore. That I lie awake counting the ways you've gone quiet. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded. "Yeah, maybe." She smiled, soft and distant. "See? It's better this way." That was the last time she called our bedroom ours. The house felt wrong after that. Not haunted exactly, but displaced. Like all the furniture had been nudged a quarter-inch to the left. Her laugh stopped echoing. Her scent no longer clung to the air. She still lived there, still moved through it like it belonged to her, but the version of her I knew had taken something vital with her and left a shell behind. I tried to stay busy. The bike shop needed repairs. The back shed was full of rusted chains and broken spokes I'd been meaning to sort through. But even there, I felt her absence like a bruise I couldn't stop touching. I found a photo once, tucked into a drawer I hadn't opened in years. It was us in Montreal, winter before last. We were bundled up, cheeks red, her gloved hand halfway to my face. Caught in motion, not posed. She was laughing. I wasn't looking at the camera, I was looking at her. I kept that photo in my wallet after that. Folded it once, carefully. I needed a version of her I could still believe in. One night, I came home late from the shop. She wasn't there. No car. No lights on. I checked my phone. No message. I waited an hour, then another. By midnight, I started pacing. Not out of fear. Out of a sick kind of knowing. I stood outside the guest room and pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. Then I noticed the wind. The window was open again. Just a sliver. Just enough for the breeze to drift in. I walked outside and circled the house, barefoot on the wet grass. The light in the guest room was on. Her silhouette was still, unmoving. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, hands in her lap. Staring. Not at a book. Not at her phone. Just out. I didn't knock. I didn't call her name. I went back inside, locked the front door, and lay on the couch. Sleep didn't come. The next morning, she made cinnamon toast. My favorite. She hadn't made it in months. Maybe longer. She slid a plate toward me and sat down across the table. I was thinking we should repaint the porch, she said. I blinked. What? She tore off a piece of toast and chewed slowly. The color's fading. It's patchy near the stairs. Elle, I said carefully, you haven't sat at this table with me in weeks. She looked up then, eyes unreadable. That's not true. It is, I said. You've been somewhere else. She smiled then. A real smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't be dramatic. I stood and left the toast untouched. She repainted the porch 2 days later. Didn't ask me to help. I came home and found her crouched with a brush, hands covered in pale green. The same color as our wedding napkins. She looked up, sun in her eyes, and said, almost done. She didn't notice she'd splattered paint on her knees. That night, she played music. Old records. Not ours. Someone else's taste, smooth jazz and ambient stuff she used to call elevator music. I watched her from the hallway as she moved around the living room, lighting candles, straightening pillows. It felt like watching a stranger decorate a home I used to live in. I didn't speak. I just stood there, listening. Eventually, she noticed me. Callum, she said softly. Come sit with me. I did. Because I always did. We sat in silence for a while. The song ended. A new one began. She stared at her hands. You ever think, she began, that maybe people don't leave because they stop loving you? Maybe they leave because you still do. I stared at her, heart pounding. What does that mean? She looked at me, finally. Her eyes were tired. It means I don't know what to do with your kindness anymore. It feels like an accusation. The next day, she left for a work retreat. A conference, she said. 3 days, upstate. She packed light. Wore jeans I hadn't seen before, and a blouse with a tiny stitched heart near the collarbone. Do you need a ride? I asked. She smiled. No. They're picking me up. Who's they? She paused. Just for a beat. Colleagues. I didn't ask again. She kissed my forehead before she left. The same kiss she gave me the day we moved into this house. The same kiss she gave her father at his funeral. I watched from the window as a gray sedan pulled into the driveway. I couldn't see the driver. Just a hand reaching across the passenger seat, unlocking the door. Elise got in without hesitation. She didn't wave. That night, I sat in the guest room. Alone. The window was closed. I opened it. Out of habit. Out of need. The next morning, I found her wedding ring in the bathroom sink. She hadn't taken it with her. I stared at it for a long time. The band was warm from the morning light. Thin. Almost too small for her now. We'd bought it from a woman who sold antique jewelry out of her living room. Elise had liked that it already had a story. Now it had another one. Elise came back on a Sunday evening. It had just rained. The kind of slow, deliberate rain that left the sidewalk steaming and the windows streaked with sweat. I was in the kitchen, standing over a pan of pasta I wasn't hungry for when I heard the car pull in. I didn't move. She came in quietly. No sound of keys in the bowl this time. Just the soft push of the door and the delicate squeak it made as it shut behind her. I heard her boots on the mat, her coat whispering as it slid from her shoulders. Then nothing. She didn't come into the kitchen. Didn't say hello. I stood over the stove and waited for a sound that didn't come. Eventually, I found her in the hallway, crouched by the laundry basket like she was searching for something she hadn't packed. You're home, I said, my voice too careful. She looked up, her expression unreadable. I told you I'd be. I nodded. You left your ring. She stood slowly. Did I? I didn't answer. She walked past me without touching me, without brushing even the air between us. That night, she didn't go to the guest room. She came into ours. Slipped under the covers like it was nothing. Like she hadn't been gone. Her back faced me the whole night. I stared at the ceiling until the sky began to pale. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. The days that followed blurred. She was quieter, but not withdrawn. She still made tea. Still folded her sweaters into thirds. But something had changed. Something final. The window in the guest room stayed shut now. One afternoon, I walked into the room and just stood there. The sheets were smooth, undisturbed. A single book on the nightstand, one of hers. I picked it up. The pages had that stiffness books get when they're only opened halfway through. I flipped through it. No notes. No underlines. But in the back, pressed between the last two pages, was a receipt. 2 cappuccinos. 1 almond croissant. Wednesday, 9:46 a.m. The cafe listed wasn't in town. It was in a city nearly 2 hours north. I held the receipt like it might disappear if I blinked too long. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the signature line. It wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. But she had kept it. Hidden it. Not in a drawer. Not burned. Just here. Waiting. That night, I asked her directly. Who's H? We were sitting on the porch. The new paint job had dried by then. Her tea sat untouched beside her, steam curling up into the cool night air. Her face didn't change. What do you mean? She asked. In your phone. In the messages. The ones about Tuesday. The ones that mentioned the window. She tilted her head slightly, eyes fixed on the edge of the yard where the grass went wild near the trees. You read my messages? Yes. A long silence. Then, finally, she spoke. It's not what you think. I almost laughed. Then tell me what it is. She turned to me then. Her expression was something I hadn't seen in a long time. Grief. Not fear. Not guilt. Just this strange, brittle kind of sadness. He's not a lover, she said. Not really. I waited. She took a slow breath. I met him at a grief workshop I was leading. He lost his wife. A year ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast. Violent. And. I listened. That's all it started as. Listening. And now it's complicated. She reached for her tea, but didn't drink it. Just held it, like she needed something to anchor her. I never touched him, Callum. Not like that. But I needed something that didn't look at me like I was breaking. I never said you were. She shook her head. You didn't have to. We sat in silence. A moth fluttered near the porch light, casting long, erratic shadows across the floorboards. Why him? I asked finally. Why anyone? Her voice was barely audible. Because he didn't know me before. Because he didn't love who I used to be. That was when I realized it. She wasn't mourning the loss of our marriage. She was mourning the version of herself that had existed in it. And I was the reminder. I stood and went inside. The screen door snapped shut behind me. That night, she slept in the guest room again. I didn't check if the window was open. The next few days were strange. Polite. That's the word that kept echoing in my head. Like we were hosting each other in someone else's house. She'd pass me a grocery list with a smile. I'd fix the cabinet door she kept forgetting to mention. We stopped arguing, because there was nothing left to defend. Then came the envelope. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Just my name in careful print. Inside were 2 photographs. One showed Elise at a table outside a cafe. The same cafe from the receipt. Her hand was resting lightly over another man's hand. His face was turned slightly away, but there was no mistaking the intimacy. The second photo showed them leaving together. Walking side by side. His arm at the small of her back. She was laughing. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. No note. No signature. Just the photos. I didn't confront her. I placed the envelope in the drawer beside my side of the bed and went for a walk. It was cold. Early spring still clinging to the edges of everything. I walked without direction, just letting my feet take me somewhere else. Anywhere else. When I came home, the lights were off. The guest room was empty. The window was closed. On the dining table, I found a note. Her handwriting, loose and unhurried. I'll come back when you stop asking questions you don't want answered. If that never happens, I understand. I folded the note and placed it beside the photos. Then I sat down in the chair where she used to read poetry out loud in the evenings. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was waiting. I felt like I'd already been left. After Elise left, the house felt like it had been drained of something invisible. The kind of absence that doesn't show itself in mess or disruption, but in the way silence changes tone. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom. Her shoes still lined up by the door. But her breath had gone out of the walls. I could feel it. I moved through the days slowly. Ate when I remembered. Repaired a chain on a student's 10-speed just to keep my hands busy. It kept slipping off the crankset, and I had to start over twice. My head wasn't in it. At night, I didn't sleep much. The couch was too soft, the bed too empty, and every room felt like it was waiting for her return in some way I couldn't untangle. I started leaving the porch light off. She always turned it on for herself, and I guess I wanted her to know that the invitation wasn't mine to give anymore. I never texted her, never called. The last thing she wrote had folded itself neatly into my bones. If that never happens, I understand. I didn't understand, but I accepted it. One afternoon, I went into the guest room and opened the window. Not because I thought she'd come back. Not because I wanted to tempt fate. I just needed to feel the wind move through the room again. To hear it rustle the leaves, make the curtains sigh. Her absence had become static. I needed it to shift. I stayed in that room for hours. Just sitting. Thinking. At some point, the sun started to dip, and the light poured in sideways through the open glass. It made the dust glow. That's when I noticed it. On the floor, just beside the dresser. A faint mark. Small and uneven, like something had been dropped. I reached down. My fingers brushed something thin. A paperclip. Bent into a shape. No, not a paperclip. A pin. The kind you'd get from an event. Or a retreat. I turned it over in my palm. It read, Resilience Weekend, Hudson Pines. The words hit me in the stomach. Not because I recognized the place, but because I didn't. Elise had never mentioned it. Never said the name. Never worn this pin. I sat there a long time, just staring at it. Eventually, I stood and grabbed my laptop. I searched the name. Found a website. Wellness-focused, trauma recovery, grief facilitation. Led by a small team of therapists and counselors. Photos of cabins nestled in pine, smiling people in yoga poses. And at the bottom, a list of facilitators. There it was. Henry Langston, MFT. H. His photo stared back at me. Mid-40s, wire-rimmed glasses, hair too neat to be accidental. And a quote beneath it, attributed to him. Healing doesn't require honesty. It requires surrender. I laughed, bitter and low. It sounded like something Elise would repeat during an argument, holding it like a lantern. Not everything is about truth, Callum. I clicked off the page. I knew his face now. That was enough. The next few days passed in uneven stretches. I'd find myself standing in the hallway without remembering walking there. I skipped meals, then made too much food. The refrigerator was full of leftovers I couldn't eat. The photographs remained in the drawer. I didn't take them out. I didn't burn them. I wasn't sure what they were anymore. Evidence? Proof of something I already knew? Or just relics of a version of her I hadn't been invited to meet? I kept the window open in the guest room. Not for her. For the air. For the way it reminded me that things still moved, even when people didn't. Then, one morning, something changed. I woke to the sound of knocking. Not the front door. The side. It was soft. Hesitant. I stood in the hallway for a moment, unsure if I'd imagined it. Then it came again. I opened the door. Elise was standing there. Hair unbrushed. Hoodie zipped to her throat. Eyes glassy. She looked nothing like the woman from the photograph. She looked like a ghost who'd realized it was still tethered. Hi, she said. I nodded once. Stepped aside. She didn't move. I'm not here to stay, she added. I just needed to. I don't know. See it? See what? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. She stepped inside. I noticed the way her shoulders fell when she passed through the doorway, like something heavy had been peeled off her back. She looked around like she was visiting a memory. Her hand skimmed the wall near the light switch, where we used to hang our keys. Then she turned to me. I never meant to make you question everything, she said. But you did. She nodded. I know. We stood in the middle of the kitchen, the same place we'd stood when we first moved in, toasting with cheap champagne and cardboard boxes at our feet. Now there were no glasses, no celebration, just air. I loved you, she said quietly. The past tense made something in me flinch. You don't anymore. She hesitated. Not in the way you need. I leaned back against the counter. Then why come back? I think I needed you to see that it wasn't about the affair. I raised an eyebrow. So there was one. She closed her eyes. It never got far. But it existed. Yes. The wind moved through the open window. The curtains shifted, brushing against the frame like they were listening too. Why him? I asked, even though I'd stopped wanting the answer. Because he didn't ask me to be anything. He just let me sit in my sadness. And I didn't. You tried to fix me, she whispered. You always tried. And I loved you for it. But eventually, it made me feel like a project. I looked at her. This woman who used to fall asleep beside me with her hands curled under her chin like a child. Who used to quote poems about love without endings. And now she stood here, explaining why she needed someone who didn't want to help her. Do you want me to hate you? I asked. No, she said. I want you to let me go. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, through the living room, down the hall. I stood in the guest room doorway, looking at the open window. The air moved gently through the screen. She followed. She stood beside me, watching the curtains move. I never meant to leave it open, she said. Not really. I turned to her. But you did. She nodded once. Then she stepped forward and, with both hands, slowly pulled it shut. The latch clicked. She turned and walked out of the room. Out of the house. Out of the life we'd built. This time, she closed the door behind her. After Elise left for the last time, the silence felt different. Not heavier. Not colder. Just accurate. It was the first silence that matched the space it occupied. No tension humming beneath it. No breath held in the dark waiting for footsteps. The house, for the first time in months, wasn't waiting for anyone. I spent that first week living in small circles. Making tea, forgetting it, pouring it out. Checking the mailbox even though I knew nothing would come. Going to the shop, fixing bikes that didn't need fixing. I'd wake up, eat toast with nothing on it, and sit in the guest room just to see how long I could go without looking at the window. Sometimes, I closed it. Sometimes, I didn't. There were still remnants of her everywhere. A scarf looped over the back of a chair. Her notes scribbled in the margins of books I hadn't touched. The ring, which I kept on the ledge above the sink, untouched, uncleaned. She hadn't asked for it back. I wasn't sure if that mattered. One night I sat at the dining table with the envelope. The photograph still inside. The note, folded once. I didn't open them. Just placed my hand flat on top, as if to keep them from rising. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I'd expected to be. Not in the shouting, shattered glass kind of way. What I felt was closer to clarity. A quiet knowing. The kind that doesn't ask questions anymore. She had left because she needed something I couldn't give her. Or wouldn't. Or shouldn't. I still didn't know which. I only knew that if love had still been in the room, it had been quieter than both of us. Spring started to come in slowly after that. The trees outside the guest room window budded pale green, and the mornings filled with bird sounds I hadn't heard in months. I started sleeping with the windows open, not just hers, but the ones in the kitchen, the hallway, even the laundry room. Let the house breathe, I thought. It had been holding its breath long enough. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew the handwriting before I opened it. Callum, I want to ask if you're okay. I've already taken up too much space in the answer. There's not much I can say now that will change anything, but I wanted to leave you with something that isn't a goodbye. I don't believe in those. We don't leave people. We just live beside the versions of them we can no longer reach. You were kind, and patient, and trying. I see that now in a way I didn't allow myself to see before. He wasn't better than you. He was just new. And when everything inside me felt old and worn, I mistook newness for oxygen. It wasn't love. You were right. But it was a way out. You deserved more than that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just for understanding, or something close to it. Take care of the house. It always loved you more than it loved me. Elise. I read it once, then once more, then folded it, placed it beside the photographs, and didn't touch it again. I didn't cry. Not then. Not after. Whatever tears I had to give had long since dried up in that long corridor between her first silence and her last step through the door. What remained now wasn't sorrow. It was something simpler. Something still. Acceptance, maybe. Eventually, I started packing her things. Not out of spite. Just necessity. The books she wouldn't come back for. The sweaters she'd stopped wearing. I donated what I could, boxed the rest, and stacked them in the garage. The scarf, though, the one I'd never seen before that afternoon in the entryway, I kept. Not for her. For me. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. Any of it. A week later, I walked through the house room by room, checking locks, fixing hinges, sanding down the sharp edge of a windowsill she always caught her elbow on. The place felt less like ours now. More like a place I happened to live in. But it didn't feel hostile. Just blank. Waiting to be rewritten. I opened the guest room one last time. The window was closed. The curtains still. A small bowl of dried lavender sat on the nightstand. She'd put it there months ago, said it helped her sleep. I lifted it, sniffed. Faint, floral, fading. I carried it outside and let the wind take it. That night, I slept in our bed again. I dreamed of nothing. In the morning, the light came through the window just right. Soft. Clean. The kind of light that doesn't beg for meaning. I made breakfast. Toast, this time with honey. Coffee, strong. I sat on the porch and watched the sky change. She never came back. Not really. Just that one day to say what she needed. To name the things she'd left unsaid. She didn't follow up. Didn't write again. And I didn't expect her to. In time, I stopped checking the mailbox with anticipation. Stopped tracing her name on receipts she left behind. The bike shop picked up in business. College kids came in with bent wheels and bad attitudes, and I started teaching a few of them how to fix their own flats. My hands stayed busy. My mind stayed mostly clear. But sometimes, only sometimes, I'd find myself in the guest room, hand resting on the window latch, unsure whether to open it. Not for her. Just for the air. Just for the reminder that nothing stays still. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.